Hello and welcome to Business Standard. I am Ankur Bharadwaj. We are just days away from Union Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman presenting the Union Budget 2025-26 in the Parliament. This budget will guide the trajectory of the Indian economy in FY26 and beyond. As always, the Union Budget is one of the most anticipated events of the year. But this time, it comes with its own set of unique challenges and opportunities. The first advanced estimates released by the Union government in December 2024 reveal a clear slowing down of GDP growth, with the economy expected to grow by just 6.4% this financial year. Retail inflation remains a persistent challenge, complicating the Reserve Bank of India's task, while the rupee has weakened to 86.5 against the dollar. Add to this the lagging private investment and weak consumption trends, and you have a complex backdrop for the year's budget. To help us decode this crucial exercise and answer the big questions around it, we are joined by Business Standard's Editorial Director, A.K. Bhattacharya. With over 4 decades of experience covering the Finance Ministry, union budgets, and the Indian economy, Mr. Bhattacharya is uniquely positioned to provide valuable insights into what the union budget holds in store and what it means for India. Welcome to the podcast, AKB.
Thank you, Ankur, for having me here.
AKB, the union budget is one of the most anticipated events of the year. What makes this year's budget special?
There are both economic reasons, there are also political reasons. I will first come to the economic reasons to which you have alluded. One is, as you said, that the Indian economy, in an economist's word, is normalizing. In a sense, the growth is slowing down. What used to be called a post-COVID bump in economic growth is gradually coming down from over 9% to gradually coming down to 6.4% for the current financial year by the government's own estimate. That's one kind of a challenge. The second challenge is this, that the investment engine seems to be slowing down as well, in the sense that the government came in a big way with more investment. The capex, the government's capital expenditure, on a record level, the last 4 years was a CAGR, or compound annual growth rate, of over 22 to 26%, depending on the year that you take. That capex growth has slowed considerably, so much so that the first 8 months of the current financial year, you have seen a 12% decline in government's capital expenditure. And when I mean the government, I mean the center, which is the union government. Now, that is the second challenge. The third challenge, which is political, which is that the first budget of this government was presented in the backdrop of a kind of a political setback for the ruling party, with the party not having been able to form a government on the strength of its own majority, but with the support of the coalition partners. Now, as a result, the first budget, which was presented on 23rd of July 2024, you saw a lot of concessions being made, a lot of noises being made about jobs creation. But since then, the political fortunes of the BJP appear to have swung in its favor, in a sense that it has won unexpectedly the Haryana elections, the Maharashtra elections, and now it is facing elections in Delhi, wherein it is doing its best to at least bring down AAP's dominance in Delhi. This budget is significant for all these factors that I mentioned. So therefore, expect a lot of action, formulations of ideas, policies, when Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman rises in Parliament to present her seventh full budget.
So, AKB, first things first, before we get into budget specifics, let's look at where India stands today economically. So, how would you summarize where we stand today?
6.4% growth current year. If you take the nominal growth, it is 9.7%. Nominal growth would mean including the impact of inflation. If you look at the gross value added growth, there are sectors which are showing clear signs of wear and tear. Agriculture is probably doing better, but apart from agriculture, most other sectors have not done very well. And from a high of around 9% to reach a level of 6.4% is not something that any government can feel good about. And why is this growth deceleration happening? As I mentioned earlier, that your consumption demand in the economy is yet to pick up. Of course, the current year's number, the private final consumption expenditure, has grown by 7% compared to 4% last year, which is 23-24. But that is not good enough. You need consumption demand, particularly in that category of the population which is on the lower half of the economy, which I call not the upper half but the lower half, which is the lower leg of the K, I would say. That the demand is poor. Now, another way of looking at it is that the household sector, which is the single largest sector in the economy, almost 2/3 of the economy is composed of the household sector. Now, that sector is indebted to an extent that it has never been so far. It's almost 42% of GDP is its indebtedness level. Now, what does it mean? It means that the household sector is borrowing more to meet its consumption expenditure. So this is one kind of the problem that the economy faces. The second problem is that the government, which had very boldly tried to invest more because it realized that the private sector did not come forward with its investment. Rather, it sat on its cash pile, sat on its profits, made to some extent, thanks to the steep cut in corporation tax rates in 2019, is quite disappointed, I would say. So the government came in with its higher capital expenditure, as I said, 22 to 26% of CAGR in capex. Now, this year there has been some problem in terms of the absorptive capacity of the government system. Even the state governments are showing signs of some sort of wariness in absorbing the higher capex in the country. And surprisingly, even in the road sector, there have been some comments made by political leaders about the quality of roads, as a result of which, and maybe anticipating further problems, there has been a slowdown in road construction activities also. So capex is not doing well, consumption demand in the economy is not doing well. So therefore, the economy has to come out of this cycle through means and measures that revive both investment as well as revive consumption demand.
Well, we've seen the GDP growth slow down in recent quarters, in recent times. What do you think is driving this trend?
I think the disposable surplus of a large number of households has shrunk. You will have to recognize that there are about 80 million people who file income tax returns in this country, out of which around I would say more than half would not pay any tax. So in other words, they actually don't have much money to spend on consumption. So it is that another 44%, which actually is in the category of maybe 7 lakh income to around maybe 25 lakh or 30 lakh income. And that is the category which is right now feels that it is under the impact of higher taxes. Tax incidence is high, not only the direct taxes but also the indirect taxes. So the 4%, of the taxpayers who account for the largest chunk of the tax income of the government, but they are not the real consumers. They are the high net worth individuals or entities that are not really into the kind of consumption market, the demand. So it is that middle segment which is a little bit financially tired. It requires some sort of a boost. Uh, Also, in many ways, what has happened is that the, the indirect tax system, the GST, has also affected this class. So, wherein you have a situation where the overall tax incidence in the economy is slightly on the higher side. Now, you might say that overall tax to GDP ratio is relatively low. Now, that is because a very, very tiny proportion of the Indian population is actually paying taxes. Because of historical reasons, because of our constitutional provisions, the states have not really come forward to expand the tax net to include, let's say, the agricultural processing or agricultural sector. These are political as well as, I would say, historical reasons. So the category or the small the group of people which would suppose to contribute to the national kitty is very, very small. So there are a smaller number of people, as I said, 80 million, out of which 80 million, about 40 million are not paying any taxes. So essentially about 40 million people, 4 crore people are actually paying a tax which is equivalent to almost over 3% of GDP.
In the economic survey released in July 2024, the chief economic advisor notes that between FY23 and FY24, Nifty 500 companies saw their profits increase by 30%. We also know that private investment is one of the major drivers of GDP growth. But ever since 2011-12, especially in the recent times, private investment has remained weak. Why do you think that is the case?
Well, investment is also a function of the kind of political economy that you have. What has happened is that in the current political economy that prevails in our country, there is a lot of talk. There's a lot of apparent encouragement to the ease of doing business and everything. But I think India Inc. is not always encouraged to go out and invest for a variety of absence of second generation reforms. I mean, there's a judicial reform is waiting to be implemented. There was the labor reforms, the labor laws were changed in 2020, but they are yet to be enforced. The 4 labor codes are yet to be enforced, and one is expecting that probably the budget will provide some indication that when those 4 labor codes will be enforced. And thirdly, there is the return of industrial policy, which is in the form of the production linked incentive scheme, wherein instead of a transparent rule-based system, you have a little bit of discretion that decides on who should come and invest where. So there are applications that come in, and from that application, there is a process of selecting them. So the PLI scheme is, in my view, is a return of industrial policy with government subsidy coming in without necessarily linkage to any job creation, because in the PLI scheme, there is no commitment to create jobs. There is a commitment to add value, turnover linked. But it is not necessary that you have to add more. So the economy's requirement is not only more investment but also more jobs, so that the excess the employment in agriculture can come to other sectors. Now that is not happening. The third reason is the government's national champions policy, wherein maybe a large number of Indian industrialists do not feel always encouraged to come and expect the kind of treatment that otherwise a policy in a environment where they feel that may not get a favorable treatment. So the national champions policy, the return of the industrial policy, absence of factor market reforms, all these factors probably has contributed to lack of necessary incentive for manufacturing. remember that there has been some substantial work done on taxation reform, in the sense that the new manufacturing companies were given a tax rate of 15%. But in spite of that, Indian companies did not come in for more manufacturing projects, because one, the demand was not forthcoming, and that demand was not forthcoming also because 2016 saw demonetization, then came a flawed rollout of GST. So a combination of factors have actually seen the Indian economy slowing down after seeing 2 or 3 years of post-COVID bump.
That brings me to my next question. We've seen that demand or consumption has remained sluggish for years now. What do you think is the basic reason for this, for this to not having revived even now?
My sense is that demonetization did affect a large chunk of the economy, and particularly the micro, medium, and small enterprises, the MSME sector. They account for 40% of the economy. Now they also employ, 97% of employment is in the MSME sector. Now, if they were badly affected during demonetization, they are yet to come back into the system in full flow. Although the government has made a lot of efforts, various loan schemes, the Mudra loan schemes, Shishu, Kishore, and Tarun loans and everything. But one gets the impression that the MSME sector has not really returned to its original health. That's one. And the second is that the GST that was launched with a lot of promise, it has been a very slow journey for GST. It is yet to become the promised good and simple tax. It has got too many rates. It has got too many exemptions. There are many critical issues that are yet to be resolved. For example, the issue of cess. Then there are questions about many sectors which are kept out of the GST, like just take the petrol and diesel. Now, the states and the center are not coming forward and agreeing to a mechanism in which a truly good and simple tax can be rolled out, which reduces the overall tax incidence on the economy. The cascading tax effect of the earlier tax system can be reduced only if a truly good and simple tax is introduced. So that has not happened. So these are the variety of factors which has contributed to the current state, wherein you really need a lot of, I would say, hard second generation reform decisions.
The government has tried to push the GDP growth engine with the help of government expenditure, since private investment hasn't picked up, since consumption hasn't really picked up. But in this financial year, we've seen the limitations of that, because as government expenditure declined in FY25, the GDP growth engine has sputtered. So how do you foresee that angle in FY26?
Well, I think the government's approach on investment will not change. I think the government is quite clear that the private sector is in no hurry to come back with more investment. The private sector is consistently been arguing that its capacity utilization level is well below 80%. It's 74% by some yardstick, 77% by some other index. So at that rate of capacity utilization level, the private sector is not going to come in a big way. So much so that even the public sector, which the government has begun supporting and reinvesting in public sector in a big way, is increasingly more reliant on government support, even for undertaking its capital outlay. For example, 4 or 5 years ago, the public sector would be relying only to the tune of 26% of its total capital outlay on government. Today, it is relying almost 2/3 of its capital outlay is funded by the government's capital expenditure program. So, private sector is not coming with investment. public sector is internal and external extra budgetary resource generation has come down significantly from what it was 5 years ago. So the only way out of this is the government continues to spend more on the capital side, and I don't see that capital expenditure budget coming down from what it was in the current year, about 11 lakh crore. It may not grow at the same pace, but it will probably continue to grow in double digits. Maybe instead of 17% in the current year, it may grow by around 12%, 15%. So the capital expenditure will continue to grow under the constraints of the broad, the philosophy of the government to maintain fiscal prudence. This government has by and large relied on both transparency of fiscal accounting, at least in the last 4 years, and fiscal consolidation. So that will be a challenge for the forthcoming budget. How do you make sure your investment keep rising, the government investment, fiscal consolidation program remains on track, and at the same time you need to give a boost to private consumption through some tax incentive. Will the government go out and give some tax incentive to the private sector to increase their investment, some investment allowance scheme or a depreciation rate tweak? I do not know, but because the relationship between India Inc. and the government right now is slightly stressed, because what the government did in 2019 by reducing the tax rates in a big way is not being reciprocated by India Inc. by higher investment.
Well, in 2019, we did see the government reduce corporation taxes, hoping to kickstart a private investment cycle. Do you think, or is it fair to say that the government hasn't really taken a step to kind of do something similar for boosting consumption? Or can we expect something similar to something like that to happen now?
It will not be fair to say the government has done nothing, but maybe not enough has been done. For example, the idea of an alternative income tax scheme was mooted, which was exemption-free, simple but rationalized tax rates and lower tax rates. Probably that move needs to be furthered, and that's what we keep hearing, that maybe the next budget will do a lot more on the personal income tax regime and move to a more exemption-free regime wherein the tax rates are simple and they are not necessarily linked to all kind of jugglery in your accounting of how do you make sure. So standard deduction may go up for the salaried class, and the tax rate may even come down for some people, especially in that category which I mentioned, that those that 44% of India's tax filers, who they may get some incentive. Obviously, it is necessary to provide some incentive, but I would maintain that it should be done in a way that the government's fiscal consolidation program is not impaired. It's a difficult challenge, difficult job, but my belief is that the government will not deviate from the path of fiscal consolidation or fiscal prudence, because that has been not only its commitment, but is now become its requirement. But please remember that the government's reliance on external financing, foreign financing, after India being included in the bond market index, emerging bond market indices, will rise and is already risen a very small rate. So India needs to present a picture of prudence, fiscal prudence, to the foreign investor also. Otherwise, his own financing cost will go up. So therefore, that is also become not just a matter of an article of faith, but is also a matter of requirement and a compulsion of sorts.
But between managing the fiscal deficit, reforms, and boosting GDP growth, what do you think will be the key focus in this budget?
I think this budget will provide a medium-term framework on fiscal consolidation. This may not mean that immediately next year the fiscal deficit will be cut, but certainly There would be a new medium-term fiscal consolidation framework, which will be more attuned and anchored in a debt figure, which may well be a different debt figure than what the last official committee had talked about, which is a 40% of GDP. Probably that will be relaxed a bit, because at if 58% of GDP, you have a fiscal deficit of 4.5% target, then most probably you may tweak the debt to GDP ratio a little bit, and maintain a calibrated approach to the borrowing plan. I think that will certainly that path will not be abandoned. That's number one. Number two, I think this is also a budget that is being presented just about a few days before a very crucial Delhi Assembly election. And even apart from that, the demand on the government to provide some incentive, some tax relief to that vocal middle class population in India will be huge. So my sense is that income tax rates will be tweaked. There will be a new income tax law even. There's a talk about income tax amendment bill to be coming, which will provide a lower rate, maybe a new slab of 25% for a large number of people, and the standard deduction may be raised for the salaried class. I do not know whether there would be a new incentive structure for the services sector, because if you see in the post-COVID scenario, India has seen a large rise in the global capability centers. 60% of the world's global capability centers are being located here. So there may be an incentive given to them on a tax side to locate more of their units, as long as they are based in India and not necessarily a subsidiary. So if they are located in India, if they get those tax incentives, more such global capability centers may be set up. So there could be something like the new manufacturing unit, which is 15% tax rate plus cess and surcharge, was introduced in 2019 with a sunset date of March 2024, may be introduced for the services sector, that you come and bring in more of your services units. It creates jobs. Global capability centers are creating millions, I think 2.5 million of jobs, services sector jobs.
Some economists argue that they've driven growth in the last 2 financial years.
Absolutely. So I think the services sector package may be on the cards. So you have income tax relief for the middle class, you have a services sector relief for the corporate sector, and maybe some way to maintain your proposals that give you some sort of impetus to the Reserve Bank of India to bring down the interest rates.
Well, recent social media commentary also suggests that the middle and the upper middle classes are getting a little angsty.
Yeah, that's right.
Do you foresee any specific action to?
Well, I think the middle class views become material and impactful for the government only when they come from powerful vocal lobbies. Now, the most powerful vocal lobby and organized lobby is the government employees sector. Now, I think the 8th Pay Commission, about which the Finance Ministry did refer in the last few weeks, I have a feeling that it may well be announced in the budget, and it will also help them in the Delhi elections, which will be held 4 days later. Now, remember that the next Pay Commission will have to be rolled out on 1st of January 2026,
yes.
A 10-year cycle. Now, if that happens, then it will mean some sort of a fiscal burden for this year. So there may be an interim recommendations sometime in the middle of the year. But an announcement of 8th Pay Commission, wherein you have more pay for that vocal, organized, powerful lobby of the salaried class, will go a long way, and all the states will love it. They will just accept it, just as they've accepted the pension scheme.
Well, given weakening growth, do you see an expansion of welfare schemes, or do you foresee some pruning?
There is no doubt that the welfare schemes will continue to get a boost, but the incremental impact on the budget will be fairly limited because I think the subsidies, let's say take the food subsidy scheme. Now that has been managed quite competently to an extent that the additional impact of the food subsidy bill is going to be very limited to around 5 to 10,000 crore. Now that's largely because the manner in which the government has begun procuring more wheat and less rice, and procuring more wheat essentially means that you pay less subsidy because the difference between the cost price and the issue price is much less than it is in rice. So the government has done a very clever job in managing the food subsidy. On the oil subsidy, it has been very lucky. The international thing, you do not know how lucky it will be the next year. Fertilizer subsidy is one area where is a cause for concern. And all other items like the PM Kisan, now there will be a demand for raising PM Kisan's outlay from 6,000 rupees per farmer household, which was set in a year 2019. Now probably it will be revised, but no, the impact of that additional impact will be fairly small. Narega, yes, of course, right to work, and it will be provided some more money, but it's a demand-based scheme. You have a rural affordable housing scheme. I'm sure they will announce it more. These are the kind of schemes. Will there be a nationwide scheme for women? I would not be surprised at all. But the larger question which this budget will never answer is at what point should the duplication of welfare schemes that enhances the total income of the classes, the beneficiaries, needs to be reviewed. I mean, take a case of the free food scheme, or take the case of women's schemes. Now, all the states are announcing various schemes. Now, Delhi government, as you have seen in the manifesto, have announced, both the parties, the key parties have announced major schemes. Now, if the center also comes up with another scheme like that, imagine Delhi, which is the fourth state with the fourth largest per capita income in the country, people will have benefit from the center, benefit from the state. So it will create another social problem in my view. So there are, welfare schemes are good, but they need to be managed well.
Is disinvestment or privatization going to be on the back burner, or is it going to stay there for good now?
I think the indications are that yes, disinvestment and privatization will remain on the back burner. There is a sense that public sector units need to be revived. Clearly,
a lot of investment is going in.
A lot of investment is going in. There are plans on Pawan Hans, I understand. There are already the Rashtriya Ispat Nigam Limited has got 11,000 crore bailout. So the approach to public sector has changed. This is again a political economy approach, in a sense that disinvestment, as a matter of fact, is completely been rooted out from the budget documents. There was a time when disinvestment receipts used to be shown as a different item of receipt, but nowadays disinvestment, from last year's budget, there is no disinvestment receipt, it is only miscellaneous capital receipt.
So no disinvestment, higher investment in the public sector, higher taxation, lower private investment.
Not higher taxation. Taxation will probably.
No, I'm saying at the current state, in the current situation in the economy, the taxes are slightly on the higher side.
Yes.
Private sector investment is down, public sector investment is being ramped up, and disinvestment is on the back burner. Is it mischievous to say that we're back in the 1970s?
Well, I think, no, I don't want to say it's mischievous, but it is not actually back to the 1970s. The world has also changed. And I think what is happening right now is that the governments are getting bigger and bigger, and India is no exception. But the problem is that there is no harm in government becoming bigger, provided the regulatory apparatuses are in good shape and are functional and effective. And I think if you are using government resources for doling out more welfare schemes to people who need not always be, be poor. Look at the free food scheme for 811 million people in this country. If our poverty level is indeed multi-dimensional poverty index created by the Niti Aayog is only around 12%, then why is it that 66% of India's population is getting free food? So these are the questions, and I said this is the political economy debate, but I don't think the budget will be able to address them, because budget, I always believe that is a political document at the end of the day. The economic part is these days play a very small role, which is fiscal deficit, fiscal consolidation, debt anchoring. The larger part is the political economy. Whether there will be agricultural reform or not is something that the budget will throw some light on.
Well, the rupee has now weakened against the dollar, and it seems to be continuing on that journey downwards. This raises the risk of import-driven inflation. Do you think the budget will try to address this, or do you think we might see some tariff-related action?
I think there will be a customs tariff review. There is no doubt about it. The finance minister had promised it in her last budget. There would be some areas where the taxes, customs tariff will go up, but there will be a large number of areas, particularly in raw materials and components, recognizing that our import intensity of exports is going on the rise. Is by one estimate, it is almost gone up to 36 to 37%. So if you can bring down tariffs on raw materials and components that go into export production, probably you are making your exports more competitive. So that is certainly probably on the cards. And the rupee falling has got two implications. One is that probably the pace at which some of the tariffs were being raised will have to slow down, because if rupee is falling in any case, then the need for that much protection is less. So I have a feeling that recognizing that the rupee depreciating, the demand for more higher duties in many goods will probably come down, and in a post-Trumpian world, probably this will be also be useful kind of a tool to negotiate with the US administration. On the impact it will have on India Inc.'s external borrowing is something that will probably require greater thought and analysis. But at this point in time, I don't see the government worrying too much for India Inc.'s additional external borrowing burden, because right now the government is not very happy with the way India Inc. Has pocketed the tax gains, done well, kept its balance sheet clean, sitting on huge piles of cash and not investing.
Well, urban wages have shrunk in the last
Urban
quarter.
wages have shrunk.
So, the Monetary Policy Committee, the RBI, has left the rates unchanged for 11 consecutive meetings.
2 years.
2 years. So, there are economic experts who argue that the RBI or the MPC are behind the curve. And then we have also heard murmurs of disapproval from ministers in the government who have questioned the MPC stance or the RBI stance. Now, that leads me to two questions. One, do you think these rates, higher rates, have affected growth? And two, do you think the union budget will give a nod to the RBI, because the RBI policy is going to follow within days of the union budget? And do you think there will be some concerted action?
Well, I don't think that the monetary policy stance the last 2 years has been responsible for any growth slowdown. I think they were necessary because to have the beast of inflation, playing havoc with the economy, is something that is sorely needed to be avoided. So I don't think that is a point of concern. Uh, but on the question of staying behind the curve or staying ahead of the curve, the sense one gets is that this budget will create enough conditions for the RBI Monetary Policy Committee to take the necessary step and probably stay a little ahead of the curve, because there are early indications that the January consumer price index is going to slow down, in the sense that inflation rate may well be around 4% or so. So, for all you know, that the RBI Monetary Policy Committee, based on an advance information on the CPI trends, will go in for some sort of a rate cut, and that process will be expedited by the kind of nudge and that the budget will give by promising fiscal consolidation, a fiscal roadmap. Remember, this is not the first time that has happened. In 2009 and 10, something similar happened with D. Subbarao as the governor and Pranab Mukherjee as the finance minister. There was a clear sense that the finance minister at that time promised that I will make sure that I will stay true to the path of fiscal consolidation. And so, therefore, the RBI actually, those days there were no monetary policy committees, but the RBI governor played true to his promise, and he came out with a rate cut. But he was obviously he was disappointed, because what the promise made by the finance minister was not fulfilled. Here also, I think some sort of jugalbandi is on the cards.
Well, India's merchandise exports have remained a pain point for a really long time. We've seen Make in India happen. We've seen the PLI being brought in, hoping to increase India's exports, but they continue to struggle, and India's merchandise trade deficit expanded in the calendar year 2024. What can the budget do to kind of reverse this trend?
I don't think the budget can do anything directly, because the only direct thing it can do is to bring down tariffs, and I don't think it will bring down tariff across the board. It will be selective in bringing down tariffs, as per the promise made by the finance minister in her last budget. So that is what the budget can directly do. But what the budget can indicate by way of a policy approach is that can the country and can India be part of larger, foreign trade agreements? Can it be part of some of the trading? CCTP is one such possibility. So will the budget give an indication that India is open to being part of these trading blocs? The last time we are close to being a member of the RCEP, those hopes were dashed by a last-minute decision to pull out of it. I think India has lost out as a result, and it's time to review that approach, and maybe the budget can provide an indication. What it can also do is to indicate that trade cannot be delinked from either investment or technology. So what the economic survey, to which you had referred to earlier, did mention about how do you look at investments from countries that are exporting too many goods to us, mainly China. So maybe will there be a kind of investment framework with a country like China, with whom relations are improving, going by the recent
There seems to be a
thaw. Will there be a new investment strategy by which the Chinese companies can come in and invest here? So that might create, fill in the gap from the private sector investments and address the declining trend in your net foreign investment. The net foreign investment for the last 3 months have been declining. So it's a cause for serious concern. So you need to have more foreign investment. So maybe some effort has to be geared towards encouraging foreign investment, even if it means from China.
How do you think Donald Trump will affect India's economic prospects in the coming financial year and beyond?
I think the fact that India's services exports, particularly is with the H-1B visa regime, I think Trump is going slow on that. There's a kind of a backtracking that is happening. But with Trump, nothing can be said with certainty. Our trade will certainly, the outlook will remain uncertain. Uh, I don't think the oil economy will be seriously affected in the immediate term, but certainly maybe later on, if the U.S. Wants the Russian oil to be completely withdrawn from the global market. So I think Trump is an unknown commodity. Is a known unknown actually. You know about Trump's uncertainties, so you do not know really.
Service exports have, powered the India growth story over decades. The economic survey also notes that AI remains a threat, or it can be a threat for India's service exports. How do you think India can prepare for this challenge?
Well, I think it requires deep discussions, thinking within the government, and taking on board India's industry. You have set up a committee on AI, and that AI committee cannot be just of the government civil servants. They have to have industry leaders in that. This is an area of opportunity as well as an area that can give you pose new challenges. So I would say that it's an area where the government will have to sit down and work out a strategy in consultation with the government. But this is not something that the budget can do in one announcement. I mean, it's like the last budget talked about, not the last budget, even the interim budget talked about setting up a 1 lakh crore of research fund corpus. Now, budget can come and announce it, but ultimately it is the line ministries, the line departments, which will have to really take it forward and put in place a framework.
The budget will be announced on February 1. Delhi will vote on February 5. How do you think the budget might affect or might play on Delhi's minds?
I think I said it earlier that the first February budget will definitely have something which can influence Delhi's voters, because Delhi has one of the largest number of government employees who live in Delhi. So any income tax relief for the salaried class, whether it is a SANA deduction or whether it is a more friendly pension scheme, which is already going to be in place from April 1, which is called the Unified Pension Scheme, wherein 50% of your pension will be committed, provided you complete your number of years of service of 25 years. So all those things will certainly have a positive impact on the voter sentiment. So even an announcement of the 8th Pay Commission will have an impact on Delhi voters' outcome. And this election is very crucial for the ruling party at the center. So I wouldn't be surprised that if there are a few things like that which are announced and introduced to influence the voters' mind and help the voters. Nothing will be done in particular because the election code of conduct is there, but it will benefit the Delhi voters. Large number of people of those, as I said, the 8th Pay Commission will definitely impact the positively large number of Delhi voters.
So a pay commission bonanza in that case.
Yeah.
Is there one particular number that you're looking forward to in the budget document this year?
I'm looking at a debt number, that if the budget can provide a more responsible debt number, because everybody talks about the 40% of GDP as the debt number, and So since the fiscal deficit is moving to a debt-anchored fiscal deficit, if that is given to the investors, to the financial markets, I think that will provide a lot of certainty, because the moment that the debt-anchored fiscal deficit system is in place, you will not see the market investors will look at two numbers. They will look at the debt number, and they will look at the fiscal deficit number. So at least the elements to be looked at will be can be more easily tracked.
If you had to sum up your expectations of Union Budget 2025 in one sentence, what would it be?
Don't do any harm.
Well said. And finally, what would be your message to our listeners? What should they be looking out for in the budget?
They should look out for whether the government system has been strengthened, because it is easy for any government to announce schemes that look very attractive, very beneficial, but whether their capacity has been enhanced. Income tax relief will get neutralized by the time the year ends, because that becomes part of your income. So it is more important that what the budget does to improve your capacity to earn more and do more productive work, which earns you your ability, enhances your ability to do better in life economically.
Well, that's all from us this time. As we've explored with AKB, Union Budget 2025 is set against a backdrop of slowing growth, pressing challenges, and high expectations. From tackling sluggish consumption to addressing private investment and navigating global uncertainties, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman has her task cut out for her. A big thank you to AKB for sharing his invaluable insights and helping us decode what lies ahead for the Indian economy. And thank you all for tuning in. Stay with Business Standard for all the latest updates and in-depth analysis of Budget 2025 as it unfolds. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and share your thoughts on today's discussion. What are your expectations from Budget 2025? Drop us a message or tag us on social media. Until next time, this is Ankur Bhardwaj signing off.